Hello, everybody. Parshas Tazria. Sometimes Tazria and Metzora are together, sometimes they are separate. Metzora, next week's Parsha, is about the Metzora, the person with tzara'as. And this week's Parsha introduces this topic of tzara'as. In this week's Parsha, we learn about the person discovering the tzara'as and the process of them becoming a metzora, becoming tameh, impure. Tzara'as is usually defined as leprosy, but it's not the same thing. It's not a medical disease. It's a spiritual disease that has its manifestation on the body. So it looks like a skin disease. It appears as a skin ailment, but its cause is the spiritual reason. Mostly, we know that tzara'as is connected with lashon hara, but there are other things that a person could get tzara'as for. Most famously, as mentioned, is lashon hara, speaking badly about another person. So tzara'as, this skin disease, spiritual skin disease, a person sees the tzara'as and the process of how they become officially a metzora, a person with tzara'as, and how which means that they are tameh, they are impure. That's this week's parsha. Next week's parsha is going to be the process of them becoming pure. How do then they get out of that status and become tahor, pure once again? So, first, I think it's good to mention that the entire idea of toma and tahara, impurity and purity, is something that is very hard for us to understand for good reason. It's a true chok. The Rambam explains that it is not based in reason whatsoever. It is not based on any example of things that we have in our world. So it's not comparable to, for example, dirty and clean. It is not connected with negative and positive, bad and good. It's a completely different system, which is a spiritual reality. So whether a person is pure or impure doesn't, again, it's hard for us to understand because we don't have a parallel for that in the physical world. There is no physical counterpart. It is completely spiritual. It doesn't mean unclean. It doesn't mean dirty. It doesn't mean like, the negative connotation such as like the untouchables and back in the class system in India. Rather, it's a completely different concept. So actually, this is, once we're on the topic, in this week's parsha, we also have, it begins with a woman giving birth and how she becomes Tameya. And then from that, if she has a boy, the boy should be circumcised at 8 days. And then from that, we go on to Tzara'as. So that's the parsha in a nutshell. But once we're talking about Toma and Tahara, I'll explain how this idea of a woman giving birth and she becomes Tameya, or after a menstrual cycle, a woman becomes Tameya, she becomes impure. Again, it's not a connotation of dirtiness or uncleanliness, but rather it's its own spiritual reality. So what is Toma? We explained this actually, I'm pretty sure by the Chaye Sarah Parsha, when Parshas Chaye Sarah Shir, that one got the most views because it was about Rivka Imenu as understanding her predicament as a hostage. And we explained there that klipa and sitra achra, which is really the opposite of kedusha by definition. So klipa and sitra achra don't have definitions of themselves. It just means where there is an absence of kedusha, where there is an absence of holiness, there is sitra achra, the other side, or klipa means a shell. So it's hiding godliness because truly everything is godliness. Everything there is no place to void of Hashem. And therefore, whenever we feel and experience an absence of Hashem, we're seeing a shell. So that's what klipa means. Klipa means a shell. So how it works is that klipa and sitra achra, they feed off of holiness, but they can only do that when there is an absence of holiness. So whenever holiness is found somewhere, and then that holiness is taken away, that holiness is removed, that abscess becomes a prime desirous place for klipa to come and feed the energy off of that. Now, this sounds very Kabbalistic, because it is, but there are very practical halachic implications of this occurrence. So, for example, when we wake up in the morning, what happened? Why do we need to do negel vaser? Why do we need to do netilas yadayim? We wash our hands to get the impurity off of our hands. Now, why is there impurity off on our hands? Because when we went to sleep, our neshama, to a degree, left our body and goes to Shemayim and to the upper spiritual worlds, and it gets recharged. And because it left our body, that, again, to a degree, I believe the Gemara says, or Chazal teaches us, that sleep is a 60th of death. So what's left in the body, there's this absence of holiness. Your neshama, your soul, the spiritual reality of your being, the spiritual life force of your being is removed. So that holiness, that absence of holiness, creates a vacuum space for klipa to come into, and that creates a situation of tuma on the body. Now, when the neshama comes back into the body, that tuma actually goes away, other than the hands. It gets left on our hands. And that is why, in order to rid the tuma off of our hands, when we wake up in the morning, we do netilas yadayim 6 times, back and forth. So that's one example. Another example is the mitzvah of nida, the mitzvah of when a woman becomes impure upon her menstrual cycle. Well, why is that? Again, it's not because she's, she has her period and that's gross, so we want to stay away from her. That's not the idea here. But rather, the spiritual reality of what's happening is that before she had her menstrual cycle, there was ovulation. There was potential for life. That's holiness right there, right? Life is holiness, and holiness is life. What is chayim? What is true life? True life is holiness. So it's synonymous. So the potential for life in her body, when that eliminates from her body, that potential from life, which happens through the menstrual cycle, right? That possibility no longer exists. That creates, again, this vacuum space for tuma to come in. And so she enters a state of tuma. And of course, there's a process of becoming tahor through the halachos of all the halachos of taras and mishpacha and nida, and the process of then, going to a mikvah, ultimately going to a mikvah and becoming tahor again. So this week's parsha, again, begins with a woman giving birth. And a woman giving birth, it's the same idea. Why does a woman become nida, impure, after having a baby? How can I say that the most, wonderful thing that a woman could do, bringing life into the world, how could that, cause her to be tumah? But again, that question comes from a really misunderstanding and a misconception of what tumah is. So when we understand that tuma isn't like this negative thing, but rather it's a spiritual reality, then we can understand why it makes total sense that she becomes tuma after giving birth. She was carrying life inside of her body, and that life comes out of her body. And even if it's Baruch Hashem, a healthy child, and that life sustains itself, and it's not like that, God forbid, that life is away, but it exists in the world, but it left her body. And the life that leaves her body creates this empty space, this empty, where the kedusha was, this life force was, and no longer is. It creates this vacuum, empty space for the tuma to come in, to enter. And that is why in the beginning of this week's parsha, when you notice that a woman who has a baby girl has the status of nida, she is in a tuma, impure state, for a longer period of time than if she were to have a boy. We can now understand this as well. And people say, oh, well, girls are not as good, and so she has to be in tuma for longer. Again, this is not a negative thing. This is a spiritual reality. And what's the cause of the spiritual reality? The cause is a lack of life, a lack of holiness in her body. So when she has a boy, yes, that life eliminates from her body. When she has a girl, not only is she eliminating from her body the holiness of the life of the baby itself, but she's eliminating from the body the potential of life that the girl carries, right? We know that biologically, we are born with our eggs. A girl, a baby boy has her eggs already inside of her before she's born. So the potential for life that a woman is carrying, holding a baby girl inside of her body, is tremendous. It's the life and the potential of life in that life, right? It's like this infinite ability for life. And so that's a tremendous amount of kedusha being eliminated from her body, which means that there is more potential for the tuma to take hold. So that's just a little perspective on tuma and tahara. And now let's get into taras in particular. So the process of becoming tzara, a metzora, tame, impure with taras, is a person notices a skin condition on their body. And, they don't know, well, is this a skin, do I need to go to a skin doctor, a dermatologist, or is it a spiritual saras thing, and do I need to go to a Rav? So I don't know, maybe they'll go to their doctor first, and their doctor says, I don't know about this, this isn't in my book of dermatology. Maybe you should see the Rav. And they go to a Rav. Maybe they go to the Rav first. There's no requirement to see the doctor first. I'm just explaining that they notice the skin lesion and they go to a Rav. So the Torah calls this person a chacham, a wise person. What does that mean? It means that they know the halachos. They are a baki. It means they are an expert on the halachos of taras. So they know very well by looking at a skin lesion if it meets the requirements, the halachic requirements of taras or not. They can tell the person, oh, yep, this is taras, or nope, that's actually not taras. It's something else. Go back to your doctor. So the chacham is essentially the Rav, right? We take our shilas to a Rav. Is this not right? Talking about teres mishpacha again, right? Is this tamei blood? Is this not tamei blood? So we go to somebody who knows the halachos, and they determine if in fact this is taras. However, there is a major catch, and this is going to teach us such a beautiful lesson. The process of the chacham determining that this person has in fact taras does not render this person tamei. This person is not yet in the category of a metzora. They aren't yet considered impure. They're still tahor. Until what? Now he has to go to a Kohen, or the Kohen has to go to him, either way, but he has to see a Kohen in particular. And a Kohen looks at it, and the Kohen is the one who announces Timei osa. It is impure. It is tame. And only when the Kohen announces this does he become tame in the category of a Metzora. So the Torah tells us, V'ra'a ha-Kohen v'timei osa. So the Kohen in particular has to see it and makes this person impure. V'timei oso. And makes this person impure. And again, in Parshas Metzora, it'll repeat, V'huva ela Kohen, and he has to bring it to the Kohen. So we have a few questions here. First of all, why is it that the Chacham determining that this is Taras, why doesn't that render him a Metzora? It's Taras, so shouldn't he just enter the status of Metzora once, right? Why is it necessary to then go to a Kohen? And in fact, the Kohen doesn't even have to be an expert of the halachos himself. He doesn't have to have that knowledge that the Chacham has to determine if it is Taras or not. He can rely on the word of the Chacham and say, oh, so what did the Chacham say? Oh, the Chacham said it's Tameh. Okay, Timei osa. It is impure. And now this person is impure. And in fact, the person is not impure until the Kohen makes this statement. So what is going on here? Why this two-level process? Why does it specifically have to be through a Kohen? So much so that the Kohen doesn't even have to know what he's talking about. We have to first know that halachically this is the status of Tzaraz, but it must be through the Kohen. And in fact, I'll add one more question, which is a Kohen is, what's so strange about this is that a Kohen is usually about making a person pure. The Kohen's job is to help a person go through the Tahara process, bringing a korban, going to the mikvah, doing what he needs to do to become, the para eduma, doing what he needs to do to become pure. And all of a sudden here, we need the Kohen in particular to render a person tameh? Okay. What is a Kohen? A Kohen in Torah represents chesed. Chesed. In Dvarim, Hashem calls Kohanim, refers to Kohanim as Leish Chasidecha, to the man of your chesed, the person of your chesed. It's a chesedika person, a loving, kind person. A chesed person, that is how a Kohen is defined. In addition, similarly, what do we know about Kohanim till today in shuls around the world? What do? Birkas Kohanim. Birkas Kohanim is the job of the Kohen. And what does the Kohen do? He blesses the Jewish people be'ahava, with love. With love. So the idea of a Kohen is a person of chesed and ahava, a person of kindness and love. Rather, a chacham, a person with the halacha knowledge, the halacha know-how, who's coming to determine if it is or isn't taras, he is looking at it through a pure halachic lens. What does the Torah say? Is it A or is it B? Is it tahor or is it tameh? And he's thinking it's a very black and white status. He either is or he isn't. There's no emotions involved. There's no validating and empathy involved. There's no gray. There's no room for the individual. It's simply you are or you aren't. It just is or isn't. It's pure or it's impure. This very straight up halachic experience could be very cold. And may I say, even it's possible to call a Rav and have a Shaila, even today I'm saying, to call a Rav and have a Shaila, and some Rabbanim, they see themselves as simply, I'm the one telling you if you can or you can't, if it's kosher or not kosher. I'm not the one who's supplying you with like the empathy. If I'm telling you that your pot is not kosher, that if your food for Shabbos is not kosher, like, go cry to your friend. I'm just here to tell you if it is or it isn't. Right now, personally, I try and look for a Rav who also incorporates the empathy. And there are Rabbanim out there. So if your experience with asking a Shaila is that cold perspective, that cold kind of answer, then either you can recognize that that's just his job, right? His job is to, right, simply tell you what it is or isn't. Or you can try and look for a Rav that incorporates more of the lesson that we're going to learn today. But the simple status of whether he's a Metzora or not can be a very cold experience. And the Torah recognizes that the experience of becoming a Metzora is the harshest. A Metzora is the harshest form of impurity. A Metzora has to go outside of the camp of the Jewish people. There's a lot of shame involved with becoming a Metzora. It's a very harsh experience. It's not a private matter of, oh, okay, I ate the wrong thing, or I touched a dead animal and now I'm tameh, and okay, so I have to be careful what I touch. I can't bring a carbon. I can't go to the Beis Hamikdash. I can't eat kudshim if I'm a Kohen, and I have to certain things until I can bring a carbon and go to the mikvah and become pure. That wasn't the experience. It wasn't a private thing. It was a very serious experience, becoming a Metzora. And the Torah recognizes that this serious, all-encompassing experience of becoming a Metzora should not happen through a cold way, in a cold way. The Chacham coming with his you are or you aren't shouldn't be the one to render him tameh as a Metzora, when the implications of that are so serious and so deeply will be so deeply emotionally felt. Therefore, the Torah puts in place that for a person to enter the status of a Metzora and all that comes with it, it has to be through a Kohen. It has to be through a person who will recognize the pain that this will inflict. It has to be through a person coming with love and kindness and empathy. The status of becoming a Metzora has to be a judgment made through love and chesed. And that is why the Torah puts in place that only a Kohen can render this person tameh. I mean, this is, wow, right? In and of itself, we could stop here and I'm sure everybody will be wowed by the level of empathy that the Torah teaches us to have, and the level of empathy that the Torah has for the Metzora, and the recognition of the emotional turmoil that it's going to put them in, and that it has to be through somebody who will come in a loving, kind way. So I loved when I learned this, and I'm going to flesh out 2 lessons in particular. When I taught this to my high school students, I said, okay, what do you think the lesson is? And immediately one said, empathy, right? How much we have to care for another person. Yeah, 100%. The particular lessons will be even more specific in addition to that. So first of all, whenever I feel myself making a judgment on another person, right? Whether I'm judging them in any way, or I'm specifically judging, let's say, their level of Judaism, their level of observance, their level of spirituality, and I say, yeah, they're impure, they're not holy, they're outside the camp, right? They're outside the camp of mainstream Judaism. They are, right? I used to hear from. What does from stand for? Anything to the right of me is, what's the FR? Is like fanatic, or maybe fanatic, or like to from. And anything to the left of me is modern. And where I am, oh, this you, right? The you in the middle, that's perfect, right? Everybody feels like where they are in their Judaism, that is the right way. And everything to the right is too crazy, too much. Everything to the left is not enough. And where I am is perfect, right? So whenever we judge another person and we think of them as outside the camp, right? They're outside the you in the from. They're outside the where I am. And therefore I think of them as outside mainstream, outside what I think they should be, outside what I think is the right approach. Or I just think of a person, I'm judging them as in any negative way. Before I do that, I must make sure that my Kohen status is in place. I must make sure that my chesed and my ahavas Yisrael, my love for another fellow Jew, is intact. And if I stop for a moment and question that, like, oh gosh, where's my ahavas Yisrael here? Where is my kindness and lovingness and non-judgmentalism for being able to love another Jew for where they're at? Where is that in the picture? Okay, so then I might let go of my judgment altogether, right? So this is one lesson, that before I judge somebody, or if I notice myself judging somebody, to check my Kohen status. Where's my Ahavas Yisrael and my Chesed? And the second lesson is, in particular, if I see something negative in another person, and it is in fact my job, and only if it is my job. So I'm a teacher, a principal, a mother, in some level of guidance for this person. So it is my job. They're relying on me really to help them become their best self. And so I need to really point out this negative, right? We have a mitzvah in the Torah, "Hocheach tocheach et hameitzacha," to rebuke your fellow. However, it's right, it's juxtaposed to Ahavas Yisrael because of exactly this lesson, right? Before we can "Hocheach tocheach," before we can point out the negative in another person, what's a prerequisite to that is I must check my love and compassion for them. That if I am coming to another person with a judgment of a negative thing about them that I want to help them fix, well, it must be done with an utmost, an abundance of love and chesed. Imagine for a moment, even if you're not in this position at the moment, if the people in your life, in your experience of education, in your childhood, imagine for a moment if the people in your life that came to you to help you grow, or a teacher or a principal who came to help you grow, did it from that place, from a place of empathy, non-judgmentalism, love, and compassion. I'm here for you. I'm here for your growth. Think about how much more receptive you would have been to that critique. And actually, if I may, whenever somebody is coming to us with a critique, with a criticism, what if we leaned into the love and compassion that we trust that they have for us? If it's somebody in our life that we love and we care about and we're in a relationship with, our spouse, a friend, how quick we are to get hurt, how quick we are to feel defensive and hurt. But the hurt comes from the feeling of you don't care about me. But what if we trusted that this person does care about me? I mean, they're my spouse after all, they're my friend, they're my mother. Of course they care about me. Of course they love me. And if they're coming to me with this critique, maybe I can flip the way I see it and see them as a Kohen rather than the Chacham. See them as coming to me out of love and compassion for me, out of a desire for me to grow. And from that place, I don't have to be so defensive. I can see their remark as a contribution to me. I can say, thank you. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I didn't realize that. So whichever side we're on, I think there's a lesson here, but definitely the importance of empathy, the importance of love and compassion when we're judging another person, to catch ourselves, or when it's our position to help another person, to make sure it's coming out of an abundance of love and kindness. Have a beautiful, beautiful Shabbos, and we'll see you next week, God willing.